Let's start talking about small businesses. What was the single best piece of advice that you were giving today at this conference?
I suspect it was a little bit of advice that my mum gave me as a child. If I ever said a negative word about anybody, she would make me go and stand in front of the mirror for 10 minutes and said how badly it reflected on me. And I think that for business leaders, it's very important that you're always looking for the best in people, that you're praising, not criticizing. And that's the start of getting the right sort of culture going for a company.
And if you look around the world and here in the United States, what's the one thing that the government can do from a regulatory perspective to really spur small business investment from your perspective?
I've never really thought of government having much to do with small business. I mean, I've just got on and done it. And I just pray that government doesn't get in the way. And I think that in the 50 years since I've been in business, by and large, government have got less and less in the way of business. I mean, when I started, there was British Gas, British Steel, British Airways, British Coal. Everything was run by governments. And fortunately, all of those companies, British Telecom, they got broken up. They're now competitive, entrepreneurial businesses, and the country is the more successful as a result. And actually, I suppose what we have to hope is that if there's a change of government in Britain, they are talking about renationalising a lot of industries again. And I think one of the sad things is a lot of young people, I think, can't remember how awful it was when governments ran businesses. It was akin to Russia, and we don't want that, I think, in our countries again.
To that exact point, how worried are you about how the Brexit negotiations are going at this point, and what's your biggest concern as we move forward there?
Well, look, I've been an open book as far as Brexit is concerned. I thought it was a disaster for the UK, very sad for Europe, and I think the facts are now beginning to be very, very clear just what a disaster Brexit is going to be. And sadly, it's the very people that voted for Brexit out in the rural areas and the urban areas of Britain that the latest research shows is going to be the hardest hit by Brexit. So I'm still hopeful that when all the facts are on the table in front of the House of Commons and people realise just how damaging it's going to be for Great Britain, that Britain does what Ireland did, and they change their mind at the last minute, and we'll see what happens.
One area where government has been investing less, but private industry has been investing a lot more, and you have personally, is space. What's the state of the space race right now between you and Bezos and Musk? How do you handicap this space race at this point?
Elon certainly did a blinder last week, and he's a good friend, and he deserves an unbelievable amount of credit for that. We're doing something slightly different to what Elon's doing. We're building a sort of space line for Earth. Elon's dream is Mars. We want to build Virgin Orbit into putting a whole arrays of satellites up and connecting people back here on Earth. We want to build our spaceships like spaceships, i.e. Spaceships that can land on wheels and can fly into space like a spaceship, and one day can go point to point as well. And I think we're not far behind him. And I think this year, I'd be very disappointed if this year we haven't done something equally as dramatic perhaps as Elon has achieved. Hopefully, maybe even slightly more dramatic, and then hopefully we'll put people into space. I think Virgin Galactic's got a chance putting people into space before any other private spaceship company.
Closer to Earth, you've been very active in traveling, I believe, even this week, talking about Hyperloop. Infrastructure is obviously very much in the news. What does private industry need to do to complement what we're hearing from the U.S. government? What's the main initiative that you think is most important to rebuild infrastructure globally and here in the United States?
There's no point in just rebuilding infrastructure like it was before. We need entrepreneurs and innovators to create the kind of infrastructure of the future in the same way that we're doing in space. We need to do the same here on Earth. And I think Virgin Hyperloop fits that remit. I took over the chairmanship of Virgin Hyperloop 2 or 3 months ago because it excited me enormously, and it will be earth-changing or earth-shattering in 10 years from now. We'll be able to connect airports that maybe currently take an hour to drive between in 6 minutes, and so so suddenly it can be like another terminal rather than having to another whole airport. The advantages of that are enormous. We'll be able to connect cities in next to no time. We still got, we've got the test run in outside Las Vegas in the desert. We've still got to build a much bigger test run, which we've got an announcement this weekend in some country in the world where that will be announced. But I think of all the infrastructure projects. I think Virgin Hyperloop One is the one that really excites me, and I think should excite other people as well.
And just going back to governments for a second, what do you make of the U.S. infrastructure proposal? Is it enough? Is it too much? Does it strike the right balance between public and private from your perspective?
I think generally speaking, the more things can be done by the private sector, the more efficient they are. I think that infrastructure in America, like a lot of countries, people have not invested in it for decades, and it needs investment. Whether America can afford more debt, that's for the politicians to decide. But if you don't do something about your infrastructure, you're not going to be able to get around. But I think the more you can encourage private investment to spend the money on infrastructure, the better. And whether it's using tolls or whether it's building things like Hyperloop and charging people for using it, so it becomes self-paying, I suspect that's the best way.
And airports obviously have been very much at the fore of the conversations about infrastructure here in this country. I can't let you go without asking you about the airline business. What needs to happen next in the global airline business from your perspective?
I think the next big thing, hopefully in my lifetime, will be supersonic travel coming back, and people traveling around the world in next to no time, and hopefully in a relatively environmentally friendly way. I think that there needs to be breakthroughs on clean energy for conventional planes, and that's something that we're working hard on.
So still an area that you're interested in investing in is sort of the more traditional air travel to some extent.
Yes, I mean, we were sad that Virgin America got sort of sold from under our feet, and we're on that one we're still saying watch this space, and I think people would love to see us back in that space again. We still got Virgin Atlantic, we still got Virgin Australia. Somehow, Virgin Americans are missing something, and so we'll see what we can do there.